Sonbol, an original multi-part short story by Jared I. McGee. Part 3, Circumjacent. The trial by ordeal, as it came to be called by all of those involved that day, was a full 6 months behind us now. But, at least once a week, Primrose 33 cracked a joke or shared a reminiscence about the day, not that there was much cause for jocularity while the little test was being applied to all of us. It turned out that this type of high-risk initial testing was somewhat of a rarity at other Global Confederation academies. However, the entire planet was well aware that Dublin's Academy Prime was far from your average GC academy. As we were the lucky ones allowed to attend the world's proving ground for leaders in the coming battle for our planet against the Smock, I guess these increased stakes were a bit understandable. Barbara, Anton, and Hai all agreed with me, once we'd survived the brush with death. I could not help but laugh every time I thought of this, because that phrase alone denoted two of the major changes that came from the ordeal. First, I had been within kissing distance of dying. As the viscous ooze had covered our mouths and noses, we of Primrose 33 had worked together to get up to the large tempered windows of the factory floor. Anton and I worked together to take a heavy stanchion up as we swam through the thick, killing quasi-liquid. Barb and Hai made their way to the window first, looking for weaknesses in the glass and surrounding masonry. Between the four of us, it only took us about 2 minutes to swim up to the window and break it, holding fast against some sconces near that window, knowing that we'd be swept out of the window and dashed against the sidewalks outside if we did not. The halls were filled with gasps, retching, and calls for medics, followed by the echo of cheers upon cheers upon cheers. In 120 seconds, we had become the heroes of our class of peers at Prime and the talk of the Academy. Apparently, this particular test had been used before, though. In the wake of our little pods doing so well and acting so quickly, it was disclosed to us that the commanders used this test to see which grouping would be the leading grouping for that class. The leaders of leaders, if you will. Needless to say, we were surprised. We were elated. We were a bit numb from all the increased attention, from simply working together to keep ourselves and the rest of the room breathing. The second major change? I metamorphosed into Mac, my preferred nickname to Rob, Bob, Bobby, or any other play on Robert. McCarthy became Barb. Fitzgerald phased into Anton. Flowers shifted into her preferred Hai. Brushes with the end of our lives shared with 3 others seemed to get us all past formalities and our initial standoffishness. All of this bonding and fanfare was touching and all, but the ever-present weight of the smock coming in just 30 months soured these mouthfuls of sweetness. The shift in our group dynamic was life-altering and, in hindsight, utterly necessary. Trust in one's crewmates is what makes a good team great and soon-to-be dead team into a crew that might just survive amid the chaos and unknowns. In the wake of our newfound renown, we were granted special access to the Beldam, an all but ancient virtual flight simulator that could once accommodate up to 16 people, but was now recalibrated for quads and quads alone. Even the groups of 8 were made to split in half and do their training together on a rotating basis, ensuring that all members of the team trained with the others. This allowance was a major accolade. Only the best of the best of the best of the best were allowed to enter. Our inclusion in that number was enough to allow us to have the word elite whispered about us while we were in our classes, out in other forms of training and in the residence halls. Because modern equipment had to amend the Beldam's original innards in order to bring her up to modern specifications and needs, what used to be an extensive open area for 4 quads to move and train amid a simulated bridge environment had evolved into a state-of-the-art simulator more akin to one of our small strike ships that most of us would be manning. Yes, but It had also become a cramped space where even the quarter of the volume of the old days made those crammed within quite uncomfortable. The beldam did have air conditioning, thankfully. That made the extremely tight quarters just a touch more bearable. Most that were spending a great deal of time in the beldam referred to the poor girl as the Magdalene, instead of, as many called it, her already less than awe-inspiring name. It was in these new accelerated training sessions that the bond from the team's actions during the ordeal became apparent to all the instructors monitoring and to us ourselves. Even the best of the best got snippy with one another when a stray elbow caught a rib or when a quick turn resulted into a body check. But not us. In those tight quarters, we gelled as if we'd been doing this our entire lives. We'd trained for our various roles, certainly, but that training was not extensive enough to explain the kind of interplay we had. Anton kept us nimble at the flight controls in the front of the beldam. Barb took on the helm's weaponry at the standing station in the back of the room, being non-standards trained and all. That was a group decision. We decided if there were anything we wanted to be when the smock showed, it was non-standard. High was at the seated tactical station to my right, we two being in what small amount of open space in the middle of the simulated flight deck served as the command station. As fitted her Omega designation, she did almost everything else, though that everything was really mostly limited to diagnostics and assisting with command. And indeed, that left command for me. I know that sounds like it must have hurt our gelling, but on the contrary, we all had voted whether I should continue in my role that I'd been being groomed for and had tested into. Apparently, we'd only been the second quad to democratically select our placement, flying in the face of military tradition and, technically, our standing orders. The only other quad that had done this was the Commandant's herself. One can understand why this was accepted, despite what could have come off as a rebellious tinge. It was also in these new accelerated training sessions that something beyond the bond from the team's actions during the ordeal began to manifest itself quite by accident. During one of the more rigorous training sessions where we were flying against shuttle patterns from the dated Russo-American War, I sat back in the command station chair after we'd come out the other end of a particularly fierce dogfight where we'd faced down a 5-on-1 scenario with relative ease. And, upon my relaxing, I spread my arms over my armrests like any normal person might have. My arm went to rest on the armrest amid the cheers and proud exhales, my hand lazily drifting over just a bit. There. That was when it happened. My hand didn't just brush High's. We all but interlocked fingers right then. In the moment of joy and pride, our clumsy hand clasping seemed right. So we pushed our fingers into the other's in-between places, and I vigorously rubbed the upper area of her hand. It took a couple of moments for us to look over at one another, grinning like children. Then, we realized what it was we were doing. She blushed. I goggled. We both blushed furiously some more and took our hands from one another, smiles faltering as we did so. My heart beat until it pained me, and I looked to Anton and Barb. He was up front guiding us into our virtual safe harbor. Her back was to us. She was recalibrating weapons, as was her job. They had not seen us. I had not compromised our bond. I had not made them uncomfortable. But I had let High down. I took a sickly breath and turned to my right again. Our eyes snagged. I tried to apologize with mine. She seemed to be doing the same. She opened her mouth to say something, but it was drowned out by the sound of orbital mortars. The beldam shook. Our main lighting went off. Our emergency lights came on. Primrose 33 launched ourselves back into action, re-engaging that preternatural synchronicity. Still, it was too late. The simulation screen went from flashing red to black. No, not black, just off. In the world of the Beldam, that meant death. We had died.
PR-33, Mark 785, deceased at 1734, Mark 391-3994, McCarthy, Fitzgerald, Flowers, under command of McAllister, exit simulator.
The steely mechanized voice stated the obvious. We exited. First Barb, then Anton, then High, then me. The commander should always be last to leave the ship. Some of the other quads in the room looked aghast. Others looked disappointed. Others looked angry. The mechanized voice came back as we were almost at the outer exit door.
McAllister, Robert, report to the Commandant's office.
My three crewmates gave me a look of sad horror, the whites of their eyes showing with the knowledge that we might have flown the Beldam for the final time, that we might have just ended our upward trajectory toward really making a difference in the fight against the smog. We parted ways, them going right where I was meant to go left. The honeycombed hallways of white and beige and official insignias became a blur as I made my way to face the Commandant. I stopped in the antechamber, staring straight ahead, still a bit shell-shocked from the events in the simulator. Not the death, mind you. The charged accidental exchange with Hyacinth. The secretary must have ushered me in. I simply heard her speak, so I moved forward toward the enormous oaken door. Upon entry, I noted the enormity of the room was in stark contrast with its Spartan decoration. That thought came, but the details were blurred around the edges, and I could not hang on to the moment. I just called Flowers High. Miss Omega herself Hyacinth. That was a first. That was an oddity. In my mind, I tried to make sense of it. Mr. McAllister, thank you for coming. Let's talk about what it means to be a leader, shall we? Let's talk about what it means that you openly showed affection to an officer under your command. With that, the Commandant's door closed. Thank you for listening to the third part of Sonbol, titled Circumjacent. All sounds present come from freesound.org, and indeed, they all come from the same contributor to the site, Editijo. The tracks are being used under CC 0.1.0 Universal Public Domain Dedication licenses. There are 2 more entries into this 5-part short story series, and I hope that you will keep an eye out for them in the coming weeks, even with the hiatus schedule shifting to Season 2, slowly but surely, and revamping of some of Prose's scheduling, equipment, and other doings. Please do go follow on social media for all the best updates, and subscribe to the podcast for the upcoming flashes of news, poetry, and flash fiction. Thanks for listening. See you next time.